The WTA is currently in a state of total meltdown because the 2026 global tournament calendar is no longer being run by tennis people. The reality is that the official leadership of the tour has become completely obsolete in their own sport. A massive investigation into non-disclosure agreements and offshore logistical contracts has exposed a secret authority dictating every move of the 2026 season. While fans think the WTA is managing the schedule, the documents prove that private equity firms and state-backed entities have hijacked the entire circuit. Steve Simon and the WTA executives are facing a total downfall as their so-called strategic partnership has turned into a complete corporate surrender. They sold a massive stake in the tour's commercial rights to CVC Capital Partners, and the consequences are now catastrophic for every player on tour. The 2026 calendar is a direct result of these shadow authorities prioritizing broadcast windows and profit margins over the basic health of the athletes. The hero in this story is the player who is finally fighting back against a system designed to break them. But the villains in the executive suite are punishing these truth-tellers with heavy fines and ranking point deductions. This isn't just a scheduling conflict, this is a hostile takeover of a global sport. The reality is that the 2026 calendar was signed off in boardrooms by people who have never stepped foot on a tennis court. They don't care about the recovery time of a player flying from Tokyo to Guadalajara in 48 hours. They only care about the TV slots they promised to their investors. The documents prove that the WTA leadership is now a puppet regime. They are forced to carry out the orders of shadow authorities who stay hidden behind layers of offshore companies. The first half of this nightmare begins with the $150 million deal that changed tennis forever. When the WTA signed their agreement with CVC Capital Partners, they claimed it would bring the sport into a new era of growth. But the reality is that they sold the steering wheel of the tour. Internal papers show that WTA Ventures was created as a separate entity to bypass the usual player council influence. This is where the shadow authorities live. They operate in the dark, using non-disclosure agreements to hide how they decide which cities get tournaments. The 2026 calendar shows a bizarre trail of locations that make no logistical sense for a human being, but they make perfect sense for a private equity firm trying to dominate specific time zones. The villainous executives at the WTA have effectively trapped the players in a legal cage. If a player like Rybakina or Swiatek complains about the schedule, they are met with a wall of silence or a threat of legal action. The rulebook has been weaponized against the very people who make the sport possible. The shadow authorities have calculated exactly how much they can squeeze out of a player before they break. They have turned the professional circuit into a high-stakes factory line. The documents prove that the 2026 schedule was designed to maximize betting data and streaming revenue above all else. This is why the offseason has practically disappeared. The villainous leadership has traded the players' rest for a bigger year-end bonus for themselves. But the paper trail goes even deeper than just one private equity firm. We have traced offshore logistical contracts that link the 2026 calendar to state-backed entities with unlimited pockets. These entities are not interested in the tradition of tennis. They are interested in sports washing their reputations on a global stage. They have used their financial leverage to force the WTA into hosting events in regions with zero tennis history but massive government subsidies. The reality is that the WTA Tour is now for sale to the highest bidder, regardless of the cost to the athletes. The villainous executives have ignored the warnings of medical professionals who say the 2026 pace is physically impossible. They don't care because their contracts are already signed. The hero in this story is the player standing at the podium, exhausted and frustrated, telling the world that something is wrong. When Iga Swiatek speaks out about the mental and physical toll of the tour, she isn't just complaining, she is exposing a systemic failure that the WTA wants to keep hidden. The documents prove that the WTA leadership has ignored dozens of formal complaints from the top 20 players. Instead of listening, they have doubled down on their WTA playbook of corporate gaslighting. They tell the media that the players are partners in this journey, but the contracts prove they are actually treated like assets on a balance sheet. The shadow authorities have ensured that the power balance is tilted entirely in favor of the money. As we move into the second half of this investigation, we have to look at the specific rulebook clauses that allow this to happen. There is a mandatory participation clause that is now being used as a weapon. If a top player misses a 1,000 level event, they don't just lose money, they lose their standing in the sport. The shadow authorities have made the ranking system rigged to favor those who play the most, not those who play the best. This forces players to compete while injured, which leads to the meltdown of their careers. We have seen a massive spike in surgeries and long-term injuries among the top 50 players. This isn't bad luck. This is a procedural failure by a leadership team that has abandoned its duty of care. The WTA Playbook is a manipulative set of strategies used to silence dissent. One of the key tactics is the confidentiality requirement in every player agreement. This makes it almost impossible for players to discuss the details of their schedule or their fines with the public. But the reality is leaking out. The industry is starting to distance themselves from the current WTA leadership because the model is clearly unsustainable. Major sponsors are beginning to ask why their star players are always tired or sidelined. The shadow authorities thought they could run the tour like a tech startup, but tennis players are not software. They are human beings with limits. The villains in the front office have forgotten this fundamental fact. The financial evidence is undeniable. While the WTA claims they are struggling for revenue, the payouts to top executives and consultants have reached record highs. They are burning through the CVC investment money to stay afloat, while the players are left to deal with the logistical mess. The offshore contracts show that millions of dollars are being funneled into market development that never actually help the local tennis communities. It's all a front from moving money between shadow entities. The 2026 calendar is the ultimate proof of this greed. It is a map of where the money is, not where the fans are. The villainous leadership has traded the soul of the sport for a short-term cash injection that is already running out. The hero's innocence is clear when you look at the medical data. Players are being pushed to the brink of a total physical breakdown. The meltdown we're seeing on court isn't about weak mentality, it is about a body that has been forced to play for 11 months straight without a break. The shadow authorities don't care about the tears or the pain, they only care about the content they can sell to broadcasters. The reality is that the WTA is no longer a sports organization. It is a media company that happens to use tennis players as its primary product. The villains have stripped away the dignity of the competition to serve the interests of offshore investors. The accusations from the WTA leadership against the players are falling apart. They try to frame the players as spoiled or ungrateful for the prize money, but the documents prove that the majority of that prize money is eaten up by the travel and coaching costs required to keep up with the 2026 schedule. The shadow authorities have created a system where only the elite can survive, and even they are struggling. The diva narrative is a calculated lie used to turn fans against the players. The reality is that the players are fighting for their lives, while the executives are flying first class to their next secret meeting. The industry is waking up to this deception. Every rulebook clause we have analyzed points to a total surrender of authority. The WTA CEO can no longer make unilateral decisions to help the players if it conflicts with the CVC growth mandate. This means the leadership is effectively trapped in their own bad deal. They sold the house and now they're surprised they don't have a place to sleep. The shadow authorities have taken full control of the 2026 calendar and beyond. They are already planning 2027 and 2028 with even more mandatory events and even less rest time. The cycle of exploitation is designed to be permanent. The villains have built a machine that they cannot stop. The systemic implications of this takeover are massive. It's not just about a few tournaments, it's about who owns the future of the sport. If the shadow authorities can dictate the calendar, they can dictate who becomes a star and who fades away. They can manipulate the rankings by placing events in locations that are impossible for certain players to reach. The paper trail shows a pattern of favoring tournaments that have direct ties to the investors' other business interests. This is a massive conflict of interest that would never be allowed in any other major sport. But in the world of the WTA, it's just business as usual. The hero is standing at the edge of a cliff. The players have discussed a potential strike or the formation of a completely independent union. This is the only way to break the hold of the shadow authorities. The villains are terrified of this possibility. They are using every manipulative trick in the book to keep the players divided. They offer small concessions that don't actually change the 2026 calendar. They make empty promises about future discussions while they continue to sign more offshore contracts. The reality is that the time for discussion is over. The documents prove that the WTA is a sinking ship, and the executives are the ones who pushed it into the iceberg. The downfall of the current regime is inevitable because the model is built on a lie. You cannot have a global tour without healthy, motivated players. The shadow authorities thought they could replace the stars with a rotating cast of lower-ranked players, but the fans aren't buying it. The broadcast windows are empty if the big names aren't on the court. The 2026 calendar is a monument to corporate arrogance. It is a plan that ignores the reality of human biology and the spirit of competition. The villainous leadership thought they were the smartest people in the room, but they have actually proven to be the most short-sighted. The industry is now looking for a way out. Other tennis organizations are watching the WTA's meltdown with horror. They see how a sport can be hijacked by private equity and turned into a hollow shell. The hero's message is finally being heard by the wider world. The reality is that the 2026 season will be a turning point. It will either be the year the players take back their sport or the year the WTA officially becomes a subsidiary of an offshore investment firm. The villains have made their choice. They have chosen the money over the players, the fans, and the future of the game. The shadow authorities thought they could operate with total impunity. They thought the non-disclosure agreements would protect them from the truth. But the paper trail is too long and the evidence is too clear. The 2026 global tournament calendar was hijacked by greed and managed by puppets. The villainous executives are facing a reckoning that they cannot escape. Their reputation is in a freefall, and the players are no longer afraid to point the finger. The hero has finally found their voice, and the world is listening. The reality is that the system is broken, and it was broken by design. The 2026 calendar is not a schedule of sport, it is a ledger of debt. Every tournament is a payment to an investor who doesn't care about a double fault or a championship point. The shadow authorities are the real architects of this disaster, and the WTA leadership is just the face they use to deliver the bad news. The meltdown is here, and the fallout will be felt for decades. The villains have tried to frame the chaos as evolution, but we know it is just exploitation. The hero is the only one left standing for the truth in a sport that has lost its way. The documents prove that the 2026 season was sold before the players even knew it was happening. The secret meetings in London and New York decided the fate of the tour behind closed doors. The shadow authorities have rendered the official leadership obsolete because they hold the purse strings. Steve Simon and his team are just going through the motions, trying to manage a crisis they created for themselves. They thought they could outsmart the players, but the reality is that they have trapped themselves in a deal they cannot survive. The villains are watching their empire crumble in real time. The final truth is that the 2026 global calendar is a weapon used against the players. It is designed to exhaust them, control them, and extract every bit of value from their bodies. The shadow authorities are the ones pulling the strings, and the WTA executives are just the puppets. The hero is fighting for the future of tennis, while the villains are fighting for their next quarterly report. The industry has seen enough, and the distancing has already begun. The 2026 season will be remembered as the moment the masks finally came off and the true power in tennis was revealed. The villains thought they could destroy the players' spirit by making them feel small and powerless. They thought the money would buy everyone's silence, but they were wrong. The hero is stronger than the shadow authorities ever imagined. The reality is that no amount of offshore contracts or private equity pressure can replace the talent and heart of the athletes. The villainous leadership is currently in a total meltdown because they realized too late that they need the players more than the players need them. The 2026 calendar is their last desperate attempt to stay in control, but it is already failing. The documents show that the 2026 season is the end of the line for this current model. The industry is ready for a change, and the shadow authorities are starting to look for their next target. They have done their damage, and now they're preparing to exit with their profits, leaving the WTA in ruins. The villainous executives will be left holding the bag for a sport they helped destroy. The hero will be the one left to rebuild from the ashes. The reality is that the 2026 calendar was a suicide note for the WTA leadership.